So last year I took a sabbatical, supposed to be 3 months, and then I go back to work. And this sabbatical was really, I wanted to travel across the continent. So I bought myself a Hilux, put up all the nice, put up a tent, put in a fridge in the back, a lot of notepads and a lot of pens. No plan where I'm going. I just had sort of like an idea.
Good day, Namibia. We are back with the conversation hosted by Gondwana Collection Namibia. As you might know, one of our essences at Gondwana is have a story to tell. And today we are lucky again to have a beautiful story. A true Namibian, someone who prefers to do, not ready to talk. So I'm lucky that I could entice him to be here today. A very kind person and one of my favorite Namibians. Welcome to the conversation, Mr. Titus Nampala.
Thank you, Gijs. Thank you, Gijs.
Titus's role today, the formal role, is the Chief Executive Officer of the Namibia Chamber of Commerce. But there's a whole long story before that. Tell us your story, Titus. Tell us where were you born and where did you grow up? And give us the Titus story.
Thanks, Gijs. You should have told me to prepare. So who's Titus? I think of myself as a multivariate person. So grew up in the north. I think my story would resonate with a lot of the Namibians that during my stage. Formative years, primary school in the north, and then upper primary went to Tsumeb, Afrikaans medium. After Afrikaans medium, I went to Jan Moore. And I still say up to this day, I don't know, I survived 7-8 years studying in Afrikaans, and I still can't say 2 words in Afrikaans. I don't know how that happened. I could speak a fluent Afrikaans then, but I think after I left Jan Moore, went to South Africa, went to UCT, studied mechanical engineering, and really just stayed within the Anglophone space. Worked for De Beers for a couple of years, went to work for Anglo-American, and I got bored. I went to study engineering because I wanted to fix things, and then 2-3 years as an engineer in training, and then section engineer. Then my work became paperwork and management. I was still fairly young, and I wanted to be out in the workshop, in the pit. I wanted to be fixing those big 777Ds. And I couldn't, so I went back to school. Went to school, studied nuclear engineering, and somewhere, I think, in between my master's and my doctorate, I attended a conference where a head of trading for JP Morgan, I was in the US, said, I saw your profile. Would you be keen on joining the trading desk? I knew very little about investment banking, but I knew if I were to do it, maybe corporate finance. But my focus really was, this was the time when South Africa was doing the pebble bed modular reactor. It was a big project financed by the presidency. And I was just looking back to come back to South Africa and be part of the change. In between, the politics happened, presidents changed. I ended up going back to JP Morgan. I joined the trading desk. And to me, it was supposed to be a 1-month thing. I think 5 years later, I was still sitting on the trading desk. I enjoyed it, and then moved between Joburg, London, Dubai, New York. A few years later, I thought, I'm tired of being a trader. What is it that I want to do? The bank tried to put me in a couple of things. And I think I just need a change. One of my clients, Moody's, came and said, we're setting up an African operation. We knew you have been running operations for the bank for a couple of years. Would you want to come and set up our institution in Africa. And then I thought, okay, sounds interesting. Let me give it a year. 3 years later, Moody's was the largest rating agency on the continent. We were doing things different to what the rating agencies normally do. And then my good friend at First Rand then said, oh, I want to set up a sovereign franchise. Can you please come and do that for us? Went to First Rand just at the onset of COVID. Again, we did great things. We did not have a sovereign franchise in place. Notwithstanding COVID, we had signed over $3.5 billion, and this is US dollars, of transactions. 3 of those first of a kind, not just in Africa, but globally. So, Gijs, yeah, I think that's me. Maybe the tail end is to say somewhere around last year, and this question has always popped up with Namibian officials in terms of we see you doing all these things across the world. We have to meet you in London or in New York. But when are you contributing to Namibia? So last year I took a sabbatical, supposed to be 3 months, and then I go back to work. And this sabbatical was really, I wanted to travel across the continent. So I bought myself a Hilux, put up all the nice, put up a tent, put in a fridge in the back, a lot of notepads and a lot of pens. No plan where I'm going. I just had sort of like an idea. I want to end up somewhere there. This is the countries I'm going through. And I think during that period, and obviously with the change happening in the country, and a couple of calls on, we really want you to come and add some value where you can. And then I was thinking, do I go to government? Do I go to private? And then NCCI came up and I thought, the institution, I think, have had a bit of a challenges in the past. Why not take that up and see if you can add some value, however small? In fact, when I accepted the role, I was somewhere at the source of the Nile in Uganda. So, yeah, that's my story, Gijs.
You see, and I think that is why, probably globally unique, you have a perspective on our continent. Because in terms of the work that you've done with the Moody's of the world, you've seen Africa from the red carpet. But in terms of your sabbatical, you also saw Africa from the rooftop tent. So I want to explore that. When you did the work with governments, what impressed you? What worried you? What was your perspective, at that level?
Thanks, Gijs. Maybe I'll start off by saying, when you interact with colleagues across Africa, especially, government officials, but even just people on the ground, these are people who are very, very passionate about their countries. And there's very few people I've met who are not Pan-Africanist in nature, in outlook. It's people who want to do well. It's people who have great ideas, really put in the works. Now, sometimes I think the passion and the hard work doesn't always show in the end. And maybe that's where the challenge is. I'm going by the comment you made in terms of, red carpet versus rooftop tent. And where I want to get to is, over the number of years when I was speaking to, colleagues, whether it's within the finance ministries, it's, within the finance institutions across the continent, and you can really pick almost any country. There's very few countries on the continent I haven't dealt with, probably not more than 4. as I'm coming in, people expect, as a banker or as a head of a rating agency, people want you to show you the best of their country. You get to the airport, you have a protocol officer, and within 10, 15 minutes, you are out of the airport, which is fantastic. And I think for 10 years, that was my life. You go in and things just work. And sometimes you don't understand, but why do people say A? And it's also one of the reasons that drove me to say, I want to get into a car, I want to drive myself. It was an opportunity, obviously, for me to think. I'm writing a couple of books, memoirs, research papers. So it was, if the sun sets, I'll find a place to park, sit down, write. But also I wanted to experience, what does Titus experience without the big check from Fesser and from JP Morgan? I'm really, really excited, with the Africa free trade. But I think for us to really get the fruits of what we want, the intention is excellent, it's fantastic. The people that are leading this initiative, I want to invite them. Take a trip without your officials. If you're sitting in Windhoek, drive from Windhoek, go to Katima, cross into Zambia, and don't end up in Lusaka, go to Kapirimposhi. Drive from Kapirimposhi to Nakonde. I think it will give us a different perspective on when we sit in the boardrooms and we say we want to increase trade, we want to increase tourism. What are the real challenges? Not the ones in the papers that we see. When I was at Moody's, I used to encourage my analysts not to just go to the capital cities, not to go in for 2 days. Go spend a week. Go to the low-lying areas. Go meet the people. Go eat the local food. Because then you come back with something that you're not going to find in a report from the central bank. So, yeah.
But I think that is so beautiful and it is so unbelievably relevant. That we fix that for all of us, because the reality of our continent is we need less of the red carpet view and we need more of the rooftop tent view. All in leadership and all in official capacities, because I think that is where private sector adds value and that is where private sector struggles. And I share your view in terms of intent. I think it's so beautiful. We see it in Namibia as well, but often it's so self-inflicted. The barriers that we create, often unintentionally.
Mm-hmm. No, very true. I think I would probably use a different word, Gijs. Instead of barriers, I think it's we don't partner enough. We don't collaborate enough. And what I mean by that is whether it's on the private side, it's on the public side, if we don't act with intentionality, we lose things in the middle. And why I wanted to say I want to use a different word is I love traveling. I wish I had more time, more means to be able to travel. And I travel across the continent, not now and then I go outside the continent, but I think I've seen the rest of the world quite fairly enough. I really like to see the green, the desert. And I like to tell this story, and I want to tell it in such a way that it's really not an attack, but it's a question of how sometimes the intent is good, but because we're not looking at, the full circle, then I have my KPIs that I need to meet. You have your KPIs that you need to meet. And we so much focused on that. We don't understand collectively. Ever since I took my role, I talk about building a globally competitive Namibia. No one institution is going to be able to do that. No one sector is going to be able to do that. Government is not going to do it on its own. Private sector is not going to do it on its own. So what am I getting at? I wanted to tell a story. My family and I were traveling into Namibia from Botswana. So you have mentioned the rooftop tent, and I try when I have some time. I go away, and especially with my teenage son, and we see the world. Now, then my car has a South African registered number because I've lived in South Africa almost all my life. And I find colleagues, which I think might be relevant to, yourself as Gondwana, but I think it's relevant to the country. A bus full of tourists, German tourists. They are with a guide, probably 20, 25 people or so. So to me, it was a very simple thing, and they have all their papers. They with a tour guide. They spent time in Botswana. Now they're coming into Namibia. I was at the border for probably about an hour, trying to clear whatever papers I needed to clear for my car. We got there at the same time I left those guys there, and it's simply because they needed to verify their e-visas, and I know that the government is working extremely hard to streamline this, but for me, it was a missed opportunity. And I wouldn't think it's the first time something like that has happened. And neither do I think at the top level of government it's the intention. But it's just how do you then train everybody in the value chain to understand? Because I was sitting there and people were being asked on, what is your job title in Germany? What do you do here? Or, or where are you going here? And to me, it's, again, you have spoken about my view on the red carpet. When you go into the country, I don't even know what happened. People in my office will send the paperwork. I'll come in, I'll get wiped through, okay, let's take your picture, stamp the passport, off you go. Now, I'm not saying we can do that for a group of tourists, but their details have been sent there with a Namibian business person who's carrying them. It's almost verifying, are these people correct? Yes. Do we have the visas done? Stamp, go. 10 minutes. These people are going to be your ambassadors. So to me, it's an opportunity we have missed to have 25 ambassadors selling our country on, there's a gem here that you need to go and visit. So it's how do we get the ecosystem to really pull in the same direction? I think that's critical, and I believe truly that everybody have the same intention. We just don't partner and collaborate enough to make sure that we're all pulling in the same direction.
And again, I think it's not that complicated, be that tourism, be that trade, be that any form of business. The question is, how do we make it easier? It's simple as that. And even internally, sometimes we're also guilty in private sector, with more policies and more committees, and all of those things create friction. How do we make business easier? It's as simple as that. But in terms of your experience, and obviously, we like to talk about the African continent as one, but it's the different countries and different statuses. And in terms of what you've seen on our continent, who do you think is getting it right, or is on the right track, where we as Namibians can also learn from?
Yeah, you see, to an extent, each country has special nuances, special characteristics that you might not be able to replicate fully. And for me, maybe I'll take one step back and say, everybody rave on about China and how China has developed over the last 50, 60 years. And again, China is a very special country, special characteristics. But if you go back to the beginning of Premier Deng's reign, and what he did is he went and he said, okay, across the world, what are the things that have done well that we can replicate and put within our model? And I think that's what Africa needs. All in all, from an economic approach, from an ease of, just copying things that work and actually apply them, I think Rwanda is probably ahead of everybody else. There's obviously other characteristics of Rwanda that probably, other countries won't be able to copy, but I think they've done well. I tell a story of I went to Rwanda maybe around 2013, 2014. By then, I don't think there were many places outside South Africa where you could pay for with a credit card, more so in Amex on the continent. And I was surprised, I went to Rwanda. I needed to get a visa on arrival. They asked me, wait, so what brings you here? No, I'm here for business. How many days? No, 3 days. Say your visa is $20. You can pay by card or cash, whichever. Okay, no, I can pay by card. I was actually surprised. This is 2013. Pay by card. There's a stamp. You have 5 days or however many days. Off you go. I promise you it was not more than 10 minutes. I'm not even sure I was asked which hotel are you going to stay in or whatever. Obviously, other countries have moved there to, varying degrees. But for me, that was impressive. I've been lucky to work with the Rwandan government as well. You can see if you present something to them and they think it makes sense, 3 to 4 months, it's implemented. So I think that's one. Botswana has done very well in certain aspects. So it's another one that I see. And then in West Africa, I think Cote d'Ivoire is another economy that has done very well despite many challenges. I think very well organized, have overcome, when I look at what Cote d'Ivoire went through, a very, very harsh civil war, and within 5 years, you wouldn't even know that this was a country at war. So I think those would be my picks. Tanzania has done very well in the last few years. Maybe not, they don't always get the credit, but they've done very well. And a fairly well-developed country, I spent maybe 2 weeks driving through Tanzania from the north to the center to the south. In Namibia, we speak about very good roads. Tanzania probably gives us a good run for our money. Maybe that's what I would pick. Obviously, in terms of democracy, South Africa is still far ahead of the pack.
You've also mentioned in terms of your trip in Tanzania that the country is clean.
Yeah, it was very interesting because I recall when the paper was banned, probably about 10 years ago now, by the former president, and there were challenges on that. And when I look at most of our other countries have put tax on plastic, which is it's probably good for the fiscus, but hasn't done anything for the environment. When you go in Tanzania, you will not see a single plastic flying around. In fact, I remember I had 2 black bins in my car when I crossed into the country, and they said, no, you have to take it out. We don't allow plastic to enter the country. Really clean, very well organized.
But it's very impressive. And I think also that leads to a sense of pride, in your environment.
No, absolutely. And for me, all these things is, when things are done with intentionality and you see the bigger picture, Tanzania has done so much in terms of promoting their tourism as one of the key contributors to the GDP. And it's a beautiful country, but I cannot see, the premise of my trip. Essentially, I wanted to go to the Serengeti because it's something I had not done. And it's a beautiful place to be in. But there's no reason why I would think the Serengeti is better than the Kruger or the Kalahari, or doing northern Namibia, for example, southern Angola. But it's how organized the place is, how each stakeholder is involved in the promotion. What is it that we need to get? How do we get there? From the communities on the ground, the Maasais to the business leadership across the region, to the business community. In fact, we were driving around in Windhoek a couple of weeks ago, and I realized we have a department of tourists in the police. I wasn't aware of it, but when you're in Tanzania, it's very visible. When you get into Dodoma, it's the first thing you see. It's a very big police station, tourism unit. Same thing when you're coming into the Serengeti, it's there, you can see it. And it was one of the things I was thinking, why doesn't the Southern African countries have this? And then I saw that we do have it in Namibia, but it's the first time I saw, and it's sort of like hidden somewhere in Windhoek. It would be nice to see it at the airport, somewhere in Swakopmund, Usakos or wherever.
Very good point. And then a question that I've asked you before, and now that you are on the brown carpet, why you are a gifted human being, and you've had unbelievable exposure. You could have gone literally all over the world, including the continent. Why did you come back home?
It's very kind of you to think I'm gifted, but I'll take it. Why did I come back home? I don't know. I'll be honest. I don't really think of Namibia as home, to be honest. I think Africa is home. I just thought there's an opportunity for me to contribute here. And I thought, sometimes the stars align. I thought you have a new government in place that's talking about business unusual. A couple of business and government leaders have been asking me over the years, we would like to utilize your skills again. I'm flattered that they think I have some skills, so we'll see. Let's see how the next year goes. So I think there was an opportunity to contribute, and I think it's a good challenge. Can I try and see how much I can contribute? But I still think at the end of the day, I tell people I'm an African that walks around with a Namibian passport, and I still feel that way. First and foremost, I'm an African. I love the continent, and I'd like to contribute where I can for all our countries across the continent. Just that maybe now I'm putting 80% of my energies in Namibia, but I think again it's using Namibia as a platform for the African agenda. That's really how I look at it. The other part is, Namibia compared to its peers, not just on the continent, but if you look at the emerging and frontier countries, the country is doing well. And where it's not doing well, you have very short strategic levers that you need to pull to move 2 or 3 levels up. One of the key point, so that made me to decide, okay, maybe let me go and try and spend some time in Windhoek. I stayed close to the electioneering last year. And for me, it was very funny because I genuinely think the country has a very good story to tell. But as I was watching, the governing party was almost on the defensive. We could do this, we could do that, A could happen. And to me, it wasn't really clear, because if I was close to the people creating the message, and I'm not saying there is no challenges, there's obviously challenges, but I grew up here. I grew up in northern Namibia. As a child, you were lucky if there was water, clean drinking water, within 10 kilometers of your house. I recall having to walk around with a 5-liter to go to primary school to bring water. I mean, my school was about 7 kilometers away. Now, even if I go to the village in the north and I tell my kids that they must go and get water from the tap outside the yard, they'll tell me, no, why don't we fix the tap inside? What's happening? So it's really a question of perspective. When you needed to go to town, obviously only adults went to town because there was not much transport. You needed to be up before 7 o'clock because there's only 2 or 3 cars. If you miss them, that's it for the day, or maybe for the next 2 days. Now there's road infrastructure everywhere. There's, I drive around this country, I see electricity poles in the deep parts of the country. So I do think there's a lot of good that has happened. Obviously, it's just that the development has not kept up with the population growth. We have not created work, meaningful work, at the same rate as where we are producing, talent. And the question for us, all of us as Namibians, private, public, is how do we actually work together in such a way that we create opportunities for everyone? Because if the economy doesn't grow, all of us suffer. So, Hayes, I don't know if that's answering your question. For me, I think there's a good story to tell. There's a couple of strategic levers, and I think I could possibly add to that conversation, and a conversation that lead into execution. That's why I'm back here.
That makes me so excited, because I completely share your view. That I had the honor one evening with the late Mark Dorr. We had a long conversation, and granted, some red wine was involved. And we came to the conclusion that, as Namibians, the South African problems to us seems intimidating. But the Namibian problems are just frustrating, because we can solve them. We can solve them in this generation, and we have to. You and me sitting, on these comfortable couches, we are also privileged. We didn't sleep in a shack last night, but we have the means. And that brings us to your current role, where I think you sit in the perfect position, at that intersection between public and private sector, and you've had, extremely high level exposure to both of those. And you talk about strategic levers. How do you see your current role, and what are those levers that we need to focus on, whether it be private or public sector?
Yeah. No, thanks, guys. So when I look at the chamber, and having looked at what other chambers across the world have done, and for me it's always, how do you borrow the good things, and how do you learn from the lessons or mistakes that others have made, so that you don't do the same? I genuinely see the chamber simply as a conduit for strategic conversations between various stakeholders in the country, as well as our foreign partners. So to me, the chamber is not just an intersection between private sector and government. Government is just one of the key stakeholders that we need to interact with. But I think, civil society, our communities, our international partners. And where I see us sitting is really creating a space for those conversations that lead to tangible outcomes. That's the role I see the chamber doing. We are having conversation on, the number of associations that we have in the country. How do we make sure that the various formation and associations that we have are actually sitting in the same space? There's a thing where we all of us want to be doing something on our own, in our own corner. I believe there's strength in numbers. A country of 3 million where probably 1.5 are economically active and the rest is still, is the future. Why do we feel that we need to compete? Especially when it's just a question of conversation. Everybody must bring their best ideas, and then we see how do we execute. To me, it's really as simple as that. The last thing I would add on that is, for me, it's a question of impact. And for you to have real impact, you need to bring people who have capacity with the people who run the policy. So you want to have people who understand how government work and people who understand how to finance things that create impact. Because to have impact, whether you want to impact education, you want to impact unemployment, whatever kind of development, everything goes back to finance. So how do you bring those two together and really make sure that everybody is pulling in the same direction? We don't need multiple indabas and conferences to debate on what is it that we need. We know what the challenges are. I think it's a question of how do we then look for the quick solutions. As much as we talk about industrializing the country, what does that mean? When we speak manufacturing, what does that mean? Is our mines able to procure PPE, just overalls from local suppliers? And I don't mean a local supplier that is essentially ordering somewhere and then put on a markup, but do we have a factory? If I go to the Chamber of Mines today and I say, Western, we would like to make sure that 70% of your PPEs for your mines are coming from Namibian manufacturers. One, do we have capacity to provide that? And if we don't, why not? Then a quick, easy win. Tourism, I have spoken about it, and we all know, again, it's a quick, easy win if we just get it right. Once tourism is a question of experience. It's the same thing as I see tourism as banking, right? Some countries have 10 banks, 15 banks. They all sell the same thing. But why do you choose bank A over bank B? So for me, it's the same thing with tourism. It's a question of experience. Why do I go to A instead of B? If I can go there and really feel like I'm having the time of my life. And then I go back and I tell my friends, there's this hotel, there's this country, there's this place, you must see it. It's far, but you must see it. It's fantastic. Really simple things, agriculture. Very simple strategic levers that just have knock-on effects. You get agriculture right, you sort out your food security, you sort out your skills. You can even start looking at, if you're having the right produce, now you're sorting out your logistics. You need refrigeration. There's just so much knock-on effect. If we really think as one and we say, across sectors, what is it that we want to do? Government, this is what we need from you. And we come together as Namibians and really create a country that is competitive. We don't need to do much. And I'm saying that having seen the continent, having seen much of the emerging economies from Asia to South America, we don't need to do much, but we have to pull in the same direction.
We both share, apart from we went to the same high school, altyd my beste. I was just a few years ahead of Titus. But we also share that we both have teenage children. My eldest is also a teenager, my boy. If we sit here today and we say 10 years down the line, what is your dream for our children? What is your dream in terms of the Namibia that they can live in and the Africa that they can live in?
Yeah, no. So it's a good question that I'm always grappling with. I think as a country and as a continent, we want to create a space where our young people go to experience different cultures, if they choose. But at the end of the day, you want them to feel that they go back home and there's something for them to do at home. I believe in people getting global experience, but if you do it right, people will always turn back to come back home. I'll use two examples. The US is one. We know the US imported their people all over the world, whether it was with USAID, and it was young people. They go, they learn other cultures, but they always went back home. A country that is not so much spoken about is South Korea, where they even had a program where they send their young people, assign them to different countries to learn certain things. They don't have a problem with enticing their people to come back. They always go back, with new knowledge, understanding of culture, understanding of how other people work. So to me, I think if we create a country that's inclusive, that is competitive, that respects talent, then your best people will always come back. I had a conversation with Nast sometime this week on there's so much frustration between people saying we have graduated, but we're not getting jobs. Are we having conversations on, are we having the right graduates? And then how do we help the universities? How does the university partner with the private sector? Is the curriculum correct? Do we need 50 computer science graduates? Do we need, I don't know. But when I look at the schools that they have, the School of Hospitality, are they tracking, are they, partnering with people like yourself? If you take 5 of their graduates and you say, I want them to sit here, do they fit? Do they understand what is tourism?
It's so important what you said now. I think, and what really worries me, Titus, is I sit often in interviews and my heart kind of breaks, because we have all these candidates and nowadays so many of them with master's degrees. And I ask myself, what have we done? Because I think, let me be a little bit dramatic. I think we lied to our youth. I was lucky. I was privileged because I was part of a system where if you do your bit, you get your education, we'll absorb you. And that handshake is not happening. It's not happening for many reasons. Our economy is not growing enough, but also just pure numbers. The numbers of youth that we have and the size of our economy. And maybe the conversation must be shifted from education to skills, because those things are not the same. And education is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And it must lead to a useful skill in our context, which is so important. I mean, when I came from university, I also had a master's degree. So I had a legal education. I had close to zero legal skills. And I was lucky because I was absorbed into a system where I was taught those skills. The problem is with our youth is that they do their part, and then us on the other side, be it public or private sector, we cannot absorb them all. So they don't get the exposure, they don't get the skills. I think the good news is nowadays is that, if we are honest and we say to some of the youth, we are sorry, we lied to you. You're on your own. You must get skills that is useful. At least it's not only in the Namibian context, because with the internet, you can sell to the world. And with the internet, you can have access to training. I constantly on the internet, looking at AI and trying to get skills, or just out of curiosity. So, Titus, anything else you wanna add?
Yes, no, I think I would say the same thing, and I'll steal Her Excellency's words, right? Business unusual. We must go out there and get things done, and create a space and a country that all our people are proud of, and where we can be an example, a shining example, for the continent, for other emerging markets. And I don't think there's a lot that need to be done. It's a question of being aligned in thinking and making sure that we do the actual work behind the cameras.
Love that. Thank you, Titus. Titus Nampala, it's an honor. It really is. And thank you for being back home. And I speak on behalf of the whole of Gondwana. We always have been. We'd like to think, and we most certainly now, want to be part of the solution as a proudly Namibian company, to work with you in the chamber and anyone else in Namibia. Like you said, one conversation and one direction for us all, so that we can make your beautiful dream for all of our children come true.